Hey, what's up there, everybody? Happy Tuesday and bienvenidos. Welcome to episode 88 of Stir Crazy. This is our unfiltered, unscripted take on today's news and politics, brought to you by the Real News Network. I'm your host, Kim Brown. What's up to all the people that are in the chat? We apologize for being a little late. Sometimes we do run on CP time. And guess what? You all will deal. But we appreciate you dealing. Thanks to everyone that's in the chat and in the comments. What's up? If you're on Periscope watching us via Twitter. Okay, today's show, the Devolution of America. You guys, if you think that the wildfires raging up and down the West Coast wasn't enough to prove that we are indeed Indish looking times, the fact that our government, federal government, president of the United States is out here authorizing, in fact, cheering on extrajudicial killings of citizens who have yet to be charged with crimes. President Trump came out and said basically he was in favor of executing the person who was accused of killing one of his supporters in Portland, Oregon. We have reached the scary part of the program. This is a bad precedent. Not to say that it's any least bit surprising, but I think the outward pride and endorsement coming from the president of the United States of this type of behavior by law enforcement against citizens, white folks, no less, black people and brown people. We have been used to these extrajudicial killings. And now when they're killing white people, you know, we have turned a page. We've turned a corner on this thing called America. We're also going to get into how press freedoms continue to be under attack during these times. A journalist for a public radio station out in Los Angeles was attacked by Los Angeles Sheriff's Department as she was outside the hospital covering the aftermath of the two Los Angeles Sheriff's deputies who were shot. Both survived. Their alleged shooter is still at large. They're offering big money for this person. That's going to get scary for Black folks out in Cali. So we have a lot to get to. Again, we appreciate your patience. Thank you guys so much. And now it's time to bring in our lovely panel. Now, we could be Destiny's Child today. We could be the Supremes. Today, we could be TLC. But I'm going to go with Three's Company because I had that theme song playing in my head as we went live. Of course, we're joined today, first time in a long time, with the managing editor of The Real News, also the editor of the Baltimore Beat, Lisa Snowden-McCray, back on the program. And of course, friend of the show, all the way from Brooklyn, BK, what up? Rachel Eve Stein. She is a climate and housing activist. Ladies, so lovely. Oh, Aman is on. Hold on. Let me put my screen up. Let me make sure I know what I'm talking about. Y'all know who he is. Best hair at The Real News. Y'all know his name. His name is Aman Azhar. He is one of our climate change reporters. He covers everything happening around the actual planet in the biosphere and stratosphere and all that good stuff. So panel. Okay, so we're a quartet again. I'm very glad.
Great to be here, Kim. Thank you.
I hear crickets, like actual crickets. That's weird. Okay. You guys, okay, well, speaking of crickets, let's get right into the scary shit that Donald Trump is allowing to fall just freely out of his mouth. No sense of awareness or reflection or anything like that. Dwayne, I want us to go straight. I think this might be V1. Trump sat down with one of his sycophants, Judge Jeanine Pirro from Fox News, and he was talking about the killing of Michael, I think his name was like Reinhold. I'm sorry, I do have his name later on in my notes. I need to find it. But anywho, this person was accused of shooting a Trump supporter during a Portland protest. The Trump supporter passed away. And when federal agents were coming, or U.S. Marshals rather, were coming to arrest the suspect, they ended up killing him. And a lot are speculating that it was under dubious circumstances, that this person was not armed, the person was not posing a threat to authorities, and yet he was executed. This is what Trump had to say about that.
We sent in the U.S. Marshals for the killer, the man that killed the young man in the street. Just shot him. I mean, it was on television. Cold-blooded, killed him. He didn't like his hat, or he didn't like something, and it wasn't a Trump hat.
Right. It was peaceful.
It was
prayer.
It was a lot. It was a religious hat.
Right.
And he shot him cold blood. 2.5 days went by, and I put out, when are you going to go get him? And the U.S. Marshals went in to get him.
Good.
And in a short period of time, they ended in a gunfight. This guy was a violent criminal.
A lot of them out there.
And the U.S. Marshals killed him. And I will tell you something, that's the way it has to be. There has to be retribution when you have crime like this. There can't be guys standing up that want to fight. They want to fight. But you can't throw bricks at people with...
Jeez. 48-year-old Michael Reinhold was his name, of Portland, Oregon, shot and killed by U.S. Marshals when they were attempting to confront/arrest him. Now, what to me seemed like the tragedy, of course, notwithstanding, but from a journalistic perspective, the scoop of scoops that Vice News was able to speak with him, sit down with Michael Reinhold before he was killed by law enforcement. That is a clip I want us to check out. Dwayne, do we have a moment to listen to that?
My name is Michael Forrest Reinell, born and raised Portland, Oregon, 48 years old. You know, lots of lawyers suggest that I shouldn't even be saying anything, but I feel it's important that the world at least gets a little bit of what's really going on, because there's been a lot of propaganda put out there. What I will say is that I felt that my life and other people around me's lives were in danger. And I felt like I had no choice but to do what I did. I wasn't even aware of what was going on. I was actually out with my son. We were driving through town, and we happened to see hundreds of trucks with flags on them. And so I notified my friends of what I'd seen and finished what I was doing with my son, got home, and then received a phone call saying that it might be a good idea to come down there. Security may be needed. Not knowing what that would entail, I had no idea what I was going into.
Now, Rolling Stone did a report by Tim Dickinson that spoke to a new eyewitness who said that when law enforcement came for Michael Reinhold, it looked like an execution. And of course, this man was never charged with anything. He didn't have an opportunity to. And Lisa, I want to start with you, because when the president of the United States starts speaking glowingly, enthusiastically about how we need retribution against these people, forget habeas corpus, forget the right to a speedy trial, forget any of that, right to a lawyer. When law enforcement begins executing white men, okay, we know black and brown people have been dealing with this for a while, but when they change it up, it is the time to, we know that nobody is safe at this point.
Yeah, and I think we've been hearing people talking about Trump ramping up and ramping up and ramping up to election. And I think that this is part of that. Trump has been kind of cultivating a very dedicated and loyal army within the law enforcement community since he took office. So this is all really scary. And it's something that, for us as journalists, we need to talk about and we need to amplify and kind of raise the alarms on, because like you said, there's already been extrajudicial killings of Black and brown people. That's kind of why we got to this move. It's part of the movement that we're in. But when white men, especially, are on the on the chopping block too, then that's like evidence that this is escalating quickly.
Aman, you know who came to mind when I was watching that clip of Donald Trump? The president of the Philippines, Mr. Duterte. And Duarte's talk all kinds of shit, probably still to this day, about, I will send my goons out to get you. You will be disappeared. You won't appear in a jail. If you are in jail, you're not going to remain there long because we will just come and take you out. Of course, I'm paraphrasing him. But this is typical strongman speak. And especially as we are so precariously close to the U.S. election, for Donald Trump to use this kind of language and take this kind of posture, what does that send?
No, I think I agree with what Lisa just said. A, of course, we're nearing the election. B, yes, he's always kind of been projecting himself as a strongman. This is typical law and order narrative, once again, because you need then some kind of, bad guys that you have to go after. And then there are other layers to it as well. I mean, this is like federalizing the law and order, which is typically state, city mandate, which is what they're supposed to be doing. But just by taking all the initiative and be seen as one person, like a company CEO, kind of doing the bidding for everything left, right, and center, he's just trying to come around things which is just not the mandate for the president. There are far many things for him to do that he's completely not able to do or articulate for that matter. So these are small things, small potato that you can just turn into something big. It's a law and order situation. We need police. We need to get this done. So this is Mr. Trump just trying to play it up as the elections are nearing. But the real issues, the West Coast burning, the ash and smoke and air pollution and whatnot, climate change, no, nothing of that sort. But these are the things which get traction with the kind of people that he's actually speaking with.
And Rachel, I'm so glad that we got you back. Nice to see your glowing face there. Combined with the news about the U.S. Post Office, which how in the hell did the news about the post office just totally fall off the mainstream news cycle? The post office is still very much in dire straits. The Postmaster General has basically said he does not plan to undo any of the buck shit that he did that has the post office operating in a slower state, thus putting the status of the election in question. But Rachel, I mean, Trump is trying to clearly usurp / steal the election. And now when he says that under his authority, law enforcement can take retribution against U.S. citizens not charged with crimes, not seeing any sort of due process or getting their day in court. I feel as though people who are opposed to Trump, mainly everybody here and everyone watching us right now, I mean, we're at risk. We are at genuine risk. Our constitutional rights can be turned upside down really at the whim of this fascist president.
Yeah, and the reason I just kind of leaned over there is I think you guys maybe got this postcard in the mail. Does that look familiar to you? It's actually from the United States Postal Service, and it's telling us to, hey, if you vote by mail, check in with your state's election rules. And when I looked at it, I thought it was fairly benign. I thought, oh, that's nice. They're they're reminding us to vote by mail, so that they haven't totally gone south. But then some folks commented that they're saying request your mail-in ballot at least 15 days before election day, which in a lot of places you can even get a ballot the day before. And stuff like this is going to really, really confuse people because these already confusing voting laws vary state by state. So that kind of put a bit of a nefarious turn on that. It's like we can't even, nothing is benign anymore. And, like we were saying, it's crazy that not only are there killings of Black and brown folks, but now we got the white guys too. And one of the things that I've been thinking of is for election day and such is like, kind of making sure that people have like socially distanced escorts and like sort of people on lookout and things like that. And it just is like, it's wild that not only is it a matter of being afraid, that you're going to have to wait in line for 8 hours to vote, which is bad enough, which is voter suppression, but thinking that you might, be harmed in some way, or that, mailboxes could be stuffed, or it's like all of a sudden anything is possible, and it's terrifying. We have to stay vigilant.
And, the rhetoric coming out of the right, basically in support of the teenaged alleged, I'm going to call him a domestic terrorist. And I said alleged because I'm a journalist and I know how not to get sued. But the a teenage alleged journalist Kyle Rittenhouse, who is still in custody, I don't even think he's been arraigned yet, in a juvenile detention center, accused of killing 2 protesters in Kenosha, Wisconsin, driven there by his mother. Where were the fathers? Where's his daddy at? Can we ask those questions? How come no one's asked about Kyle Rittenhouse's daddy? We don't talk about insufficient daddying. Let's talk about that. But let's get back to another point. But the right has come out in support of this young man. Everyone from Tucker Carlson, including Donald Trump. And he alluded to that during part of his interview with Judge Janine. V2, Dwayne, please.
We're not there yet, but you have people that are very angry. You start seeing them, the trucks come in and this comes in and that. All of a sudden, you're going to see a backlash, the likes of which you haven't seen in many, many years, because people aren't going to take it. You know, a lot of people, this is all a left movement, not a right movement.
Right.
But a lot of people on the right are sitting home watching a television set, looking at Kenosha and looking at Chicago, where they shoot people and kill people by the dozens every week. Right. It's not even believable, but they look at it and they say, I'm not going to allow that to happen in my country.
Not going to allow that to happen in my country. Well, guys, I don't want to necessarily take a bad turn at this, but what Trump said is kind of poignant in a way, because when he talks about you're going to have people who are going to retaliate, you're going to have people who are going to fight back. I can't help but to examine what happened in Compton, California over the weekend with the shooting of 2 Los Angeles Sheriff's Department deputies as the other side of the coin to what Trump is talking about. Because he's talking about his supporters coming out to Black Lives Matter demonstrations to protect property. And if they're armed and if they kill people, so be it. They did what needed to be done. Well, on the flip side of that, some could argue that the shooting of these 2 police in Los Angeles is a part of that sort of thinking, Lisa. And I know we certainly don't advocate violence really against anybody. We don't want the cops killing people. We don't want people killing the cops. But when you see something like this, when you see the person still very much on the loose, not apprehended, but taking this very brazen, blatant act to try to kill cops when this specific department, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, has been complicit at least in 2 shootings of unarmed people since this summer began. Andres Gallardo, I'm sorry, my apologies. The 18-year-old security guard who was shot 5 times in the back in Compton, California. And this most recent shooting, not even 2 weeks ago, Dijon Kizzee, the 29-year-old man who was shot while on his bicycle by LASD. How is Trump and what this actions of this other shooter sort of 2 sides of the same coin?
I mean, I think that's why it's so deadly, potentially deadly. And so the norms that Trump is undoing are so important, because it shouldn't get to this. Like, he sits in front of this camera that's blasted out to, thousands of people, even folks like us. Like, I don't watch Fox News, but I'm watching it right now. And like, we as humans in our, little bit of wisdom, we at least figured out how to take the passion out of things and have a process. And so, like, if we had that process and it was the right process, then even like this police officer killing potentially wouldn't have happened. Like, people wouldn't feel pressed on either side to take matters into their own hands. And that's why it's like, these norms aren't perfect at all. But we need to make sure that they are in place, and then we need to make sure that they're corrected and kind of, made a more perfect union, because otherwise it's not safe for anybody.
Aman, we have seen since the rise of people taken to the streets over the past few months now, there have been some attacks on law enforcement, and even Vice President Mike Pence referenced one during the Republican National Convention. But what he failed to mention was the attack on law enforcement outside of the federal courthouse in Oakland was done by one of the Boogaloo Boys, a white supremacist organization. And it's been well documented that white supremacists, people who believe in white nationalism or who are affiliated with such organizations, such groups, are more of a threat to law enforcement than Black Lives Matter. But you wouldn't know it if you listen to Attorney General Bill Barr even Eric Holder, if we really want to get technical. But when we see these kinds of actions start to happen, these retaliatory responses where people are taking both Kyle Rittenhouse and the person who shot the LA sheriff's deputies in Compton, taking matters into their own hands. I mean, these are, in fact, political statements, but America is so armed. This is sort of a bad harbinger, possibly.
In every way, this is truly scary, and of course it starts with the presidency, the administration, of course, forming this kind of an unruly alliance with the alt-right armed militias, and we have countless number of examples where this has been seen, that armed militias have been greeted by police, and things have been going south for a while. If you put two and two together, then you get the sense that people are not feeling as though their lives and their property and their right to protest are being secured. Not at all. This is something which is now, descending into a lack of trust, a general trust amongst people who are at the same time fighting for their rights, fighting for their lives, fighting for so much more, and now they have to watch that they are being protected by who. So this is what this divisive politics and this nexus that Mr. Trump has, sought to form with the alt-right in this country. This is the direct result for that, and I will blame this administration for doing it. And this is bad. This is where the institutions get another hit. The institutions who are supposed to be watching the public interest kind of lose it at this point in time, and this is something that needs to be corrected immediately. Okay.
Rachel, from the comments, King Kamishiro says, people on the left don't get to see a court of law. Trump said it's open season on leftists/sympathizers with the Black Lives Matter cause, while assholes like Kyle Rittenhouse get defended. Tell us, what have been your observations? I mean, because we know, for example, NYPD has a long history of white supremacists embedded, sometimes overtly, into the police department there. And there have been countless times that NYPD has shot and killed unarmed people of color. So talk to me about how, when we're dealing with the police and the counter movement against the police, how does this not continue to escalate from a violence perspective?
Sorry, that's a big question. I mean, in terms of how people are treated, you of course notice a stark difference here. And when you're, looking at the people who are protesting against the police, between those who are able to quickly get legal counsel and those who aren't, and who have to spend time in, overnight in jail, and who are at risk of getting COVID. It's sort of like these dominoes that go down for certain parts of the population. And I mean, I think here, folks have been trying to keep the peace as much as possible, and things have been, from what I understand, pretty, I don't know if orderly is the right word, but they have people there to sort of de-escalate situations. I mean, we also do have some elected officials who are with the protesters pretty squarely. And, like our public advocate, who's second in line after the mayor, some of our city council members. And so that's helped, because we have people who are in actual power speaking out about these things. Unfortunately, we don't really have the mayor and the governor behind us, in addition to obviously not having the president behind us. So that has just complicated matters a whole lot. And so I don't see the situation getting a whole ton better unless the mayor does a real 180, or the governor.
So guys, like I said, we are witnessing the devolution of the United States, constitutional rights out the window, civil rights out the window. We have seen the rights of people's freedom to assembly be quashed, stamped down over the course of these past several months. We've seen people be tear gassed in the streets, illegally arrested, and we have also continued to see attacks on a free press. And when we saw journalists covering some of the protests, really nationwide, be gassed themselves, shot at themselves with munitions from law enforcement, I mean, to me, that was a big red flag, like the biggest, reddest of flags. Like, it is about to be a whole nother scenario here in the United States if these attacks on the press continue unabated. And they're still ongoing. And the most recent example of that happened after the shooting of these two Los Angeles sheriff's deputies at the hospital. A journalist for the NPR station, the public radio station out there, KPCC, her name was Josie Huang. She was at the hospital covering the aftermath. Demonstrations popped up right there at the hospital. Some protesters alleged to be mocking police, others showing up in support of the police. And I want us to take a look at this video, Dwayne. And actually, I can talk over it because I don't think there's a whole lot of dialogue that we witnessed until about the very end. But let me take you to what Ms. Huang was witnessing as she was working as a journalist for KPCC radio. So she said she was at the St. Francis Medical Center, and here is some of the her perspective where she saw police engaging with a protester, possibly attempting to go in and arrest this person. You kind of see police moving a little bit off in the distance, and she is keeping a distance. According to her tweet, she's keeping a relatively safe distance, and she has used the Zoom feature on her cell phone to, get sort of a better, closer vantage point without physically moving herself closer. She's able to zoom in on what's happening. So she's seeing police engage with this person, attempting to possibly apprehend them. And as she moves closer, she sees some of the deputies turn around and tell her to move back. And again, she's not actually, according to her, standing physically this close. She's using the Zoom feature to get better perspective and better focus. Let's listen here, Dwayne. Pop that up. And detention of this working journalist. Initially, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department's office said that Ms. Huang was not identifying herself as press, but oh no, if you heard at the tail end of the video that was shot from her cell phone, and kudos to her for being able to keep presence of mind to keep making a new video file. She screams it, KPCC, I'm from KPCC, very well-known public radio station in Los Angeles. So there was proof there that the police lied about assaulting this journalist who was doing her job as she was constitutionally protected to do. Lisa, I mean, what do you do here? If you're a journalist working these sort of volatile situations and the police are making it very clear that they don't give a shit about your constitutional right there as a member of the press, and they will assault you and they will harm you. They will throw you down. You heard her screaming. She kept saying, "You're hurting me." In the course of doing her job while also adhering to professional standards of identifying herself as a journalist first and foremostly, and also wearing her press credentials. I mean, what differently could she have done in this situation to possibly avoid that, which is a dumb question. That's victim blaming. I'm sorry for even letting that stupid question come out my mouth. What do journalists do when placed in these dangerous situations when the police are the ones putting them in danger?
First, my heart goes out to that reporter because I'm sure that's traumatic. Journalism is hard enough under good circumstances. I'm sure she's not paid enough to have to deal with that. It's beyond time for the powers that be in journalism to understand that what happened to this reporter happens to people who don't have high-profile jobs. every day. There have been Black and brown people and poor people who have said for decades, the police lie. And journalism has still said, no, we're gonna report what the police said. We're gonna take a press release. It's what the police said. We can just say it. As all of these kind of systems that we have kind of break down, it's a great opportunity for us to build them back up and make them stronger. And there has to be a reckoning in journalism that we can't give police the power that they've gotten all these decades. That's why they feel so empowered to act with impunity, to take this woman down, to take the gentleman down that they were, that she was filming and arresting. Because the way that they've operated for so long is they do what they want. They put out a press release. The police put out a press release that's, that you said that said the lady didn't identify herself. We were acting as, and we can see with our eyes that didn't happen. But guess what? That's happened so many other times before. So why wouldn't they try it now? So, my battle cry in journalism is always allow Black and brown people in, allow people with all types of economic backgrounds in, and you actually will get the true story, and you'll get you'll actually be able to do the work of challenging powerful people and institutions and making them better for everybody.
Aman, are press freedoms under attack in America?
Yeah, this is downright culture of impunity, which has been, it's in perpetuity right now under this administration. The thing is that people need to understand that we do the job. Our job is to record things where people can't be all the time, but we do it. That's why when people are kind of running away from a situation, we are running towards it because this is what we do. And that's not an easy thing to do. So we become an easy target. But lately, what's been happening is that instead of reporting, we are becoming story ourselves. We are supposed to be reporting the stories that we cover. But when we start becoming, or the journalists start becoming, and journalists of color, mind you, more and more. So we're becoming like a soft target for police impunity in that sense. And that's something which needs to be taken very seriously, because we do the job so that people are informed, not so that we become part of the story ourselves and walk out with their arms dislocated or fingers, broken for that matter. So kudos to that journalist, of course. And I think this is time that probably now that we're getting close to this election period, maybe things would escalate even more because, mind you, Kim, that this situation is not going to go away. In fact, Mr. Trump relies on these kinds of tactics so that there's a constant chaos somewhere so that he can then go ahead and do the whole law enforcement and law and order narrative that he's been trumpeting all this time. But this is a culture of impunity. This would not work. This is not good.
Rachel, it's perfectly understandable that most of mainstream America doesn't understand concepts like defund the police and abolish the police. It's very antithetical to how Americans are generally programmed to view law enforcement, officer friendly, any kind of emergency, dial 911. I mean, these things are very much ingrained in us from youth. We are socially programmed to have a disposition to be deferential towards police. But what is it going to take for police to really lose mainstream credibility, where not everyone, but people who have a tendency to say, well, this person was not being compliant, or if they had just listened, perhaps police would not have shot them 7 times in the back, or this woman would not have been slammed to the ground and forcefully arrested. She must have been doing something wrong. But when it is proven time and again that the police lie about the facts, distort the facts, sometimes even manufacture evidence or cover up evidence or delete evidence, a variety of ways that the police try to control the narrative. What's it going to take for mainstream Americans to be like, you know what? These motherfuckers is lying again.
Well, I don't know that I can speak for mainstream America, but I want to echo what Lisa and Aman were talking about in terms of making sure that Black and brown reporters are being hired and are a greater percentage of our press corps. I see here, there's just tons of cuts everywhere locally on reporters. And so, basically the only local reporters I know are white people. And that's really bad. And I mean, it's on the national side too. And until we get things being covered in the mainstream in a way that is actually truthful and objective, people are still going to be looking at the news, and I think especially television news as well, local news, which is still very like pro-police leaning. We're just going to keep getting this idea that the sort of moral center is with the police. And I do want to mention one thing that I've been thinking about throughout all of these conversations around press, is that we've been talking about, like, you know, how terrible it is that the police have been targeting press. And that's, you know, we feel like that's sort of off limits. And that's because when, you know, foreign correspondents are covering a war, it's sort of understood that they're not to be attacked. Like medics, like a lot of journalists don't even carry guns or weapons, and that's a controversial topic in itself. And that kind of implies that what we're dealing with here is a war zone, and that we're looking at war zone rules. And it kind of also connects with COVID and with, you know, having to triage people with ventilators. I mean, I know I kind of sound like I'm going off on a thing, but it's really stoked this feeling of war in America. And I think until mainstream Americans see other voices and get the idea that, you know, what they're seeing right now is biased, then we're not really going to dig our way out of this.
First of all, Rachel, let me apologize. I have a very bad habit. When we have on white guests, I'm like, oh, we have a white guest. Can you explain the white perspective of this, please? And that's not to say, obviously, that you share the perspective. However, I know, just like people of all ethnicities, when we are honest to ourselves, the conversation does change a little different. And people sometimes are more free to speak their real opinions when there's not people of other ethnicities around. And I'm not even suggesting that is the case with you. I'm just saying, when I do call on white people to answer for other white people, not even saying that they...
for sure.
So, my bad. I did not mean to...
No, that's fine. And I do think... I guess I don't think of myself as that being like this kind of coastal leftist or whatever. And having most of my relatives be like also pretty leftist. But in terms of, you know, white people or white Jews, whatever I'm associated with, I think that a lot of folks still don't feel a visceral reaction to this, because for us, it's not... Our literal bodies are not being targeted. And unfortunately, I think until either someone that you love faces this kind of tragedy, or where you are in a situation where all of a sudden you feel that sense of your body being on the line, I think that's where, unfortunately, the change comes from. And I think, of course, just socializing and being open to talking with Black and brown folks authentically about what is happening to them, and not just sort of saying, oh, but not all cops are bad, you know, that sort of thing. I think that is still very much in the lexicon for a lot of people. And it's been years of cultural conditioning, which I've certainly been like conditioned into as well. And it's taken a lot to really break through that.
And can I please give a shout out to the fallen allies? I mean, my gosh, there have been white people throughout this summer who have literally laid their lives down in Kenosha, in Austin, in Portland now. So yeah, we know that white folks are definitely showing up in ways and in numbers that perhaps we have not seen before, and putting their bodies and their safety between the people out there for Black lives and law enforcement, and some have tragically, paid the price for it. Guys, having to stick with this policing theme, if we could, for a moment, there was a little bit of breaking news happening this afternoon out of Louisville, Kentucky, where the city of Louisville has filed, or rather settled, with the family of Brianna Taylor. That number is $12 million, a $12 million settlement between the city of Louisville and the family of Brianna Taylor. As we know, Brianna was killed back in March when a no-knock warrant on her home was executed. 3 police officers, one fired, no charges against none of them at this point still. When are the charges going to be filed? No one can really say. But her family has been granted this settlement. And Lisa, of course, her family wants justice, and money does not equal justice. But we've seen this a lot. And this is a national thing where police departments, big, small, and in the middle, end up spending tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars a year in settlements with the families of those who were unjustly killed. And sometimes charges are filed against the police, and sometimes charges are not. What are we to make of this latest settlement with the family of a victim who was unjustly murdered by police?
Well, I want to, give some extra clarity. I think it was Jamel Hill who tweeted out, it's not the police paid this out. The communities paid this out. This is the community's money that could go to any number of things: feeding children, educating people, giving people homes. And for whatever reason in this country, the agreement that we've made is that we can kill Black people and then we'll pay for it. Not we're going to stop killing Black people. So that's like one thing that I think that we should, kind of make sure that we keep in the front of our minds. It's like, it doesn't even make fiscal sense to keep doing this. But also it's like, I hope I'm never in this woman, Brianna Taylor's family's shoes. And I can't imagine the pain that they've gone through. I'm sure that they would rather, they'd rather have her than any amount of money. But I'm also sure that they didn't want to be dragged through whatever a trial would be like in this terrible racist country. They've been put in a terrible situation. And even now, I'm sure, like, knowing what happened here in Baltimore after Freddie Gray, racist folks are so happy every time anybody brings up Freddie Gray to be like, well, his family got paid. Like this was some kind of grand scheme that they did, that they wanted their loved one to be murdered in such a terrible way. Not murdered, but, die in such a terrible way. And, they've been put in a terrible situation.
Aman, your thoughts of, exactly what Lisa said. We see some of these police departments have budgets in the billions, and large portions of that, not insignificant pieces of that, are used to basically cover up for police crimes. Why? Why is it something that we accept over justice? Or why is the state more willing to issue a 7 or 8 figure check rather than issue an indictment against a police officer, police person who violated the law?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better than what Lisa said. That's really is the entire story, because it's not their money. They just take the money given to them and then pass it along as and when, of course, somebody has to go through the entire ordeal of first having to put up with losing a dear one, then go through the entire public debate about it, having to endure that. And that is never easy, of course, because there are people ripping into this all the time. And then, of course, then mustering enough strength to go through the entire litigative process, and at the end of which you may or may not get what some folks do. But then even after that doesn't return your dear one, the one that you've lost. And the police continue with the way that they are used to. And that's the same narrative perpetuated over and over again. As I said many times, Kim, on this program, that the job for the police force is to make sure that people exercise their right, their political rights and the rights to assembly in a safe environment. The police in this country is acting as though they're the guardians of private finance, and they're the colonizing force, an instrument of coercion. That's not a civil policing, really. And these rights, these protests are made worse by these kinds of, this culture of impunity, which has been going on for the past couple of years now, especially since, and I must say, since Mr. Trump has taken over office. So this is not good for anybody. And for anyone, if police and a lot of our public institutions work because they command public respect, if police loses public respect, then they stop being a police. So that's a very important point that they need to know. Just writing off checks doesn't cut it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been standard operating procedure for some time now. And it seems, just from my limited perspective, that these sort of lawsuits and subsequent settlements have been accelerating over the past 20 or 25 or so years. I'm thinking about Rodney King, whatever settlement he received from the city or county of Los Angeles back in the early 90s. I mean, it just sort of became an expectation, I think, that people would get and should be compensated. I mean, because justice is not forthcoming in a lot of these cases. And Rachel, when it comes to the rallying cry that's out there right now for defund the police, I mean, this is absolutely part of that, where police should not be allowed to kill people with impunity by just writing a check and making the situation go away with really no sort of obvious damages to their career or their abilities to still remain on the streets as public officers.
Yeah, I mean, you can also look at the government paying huge settlements for like elected officials who have sexually harassed their employees. All sorts of things like that, where public money is being used because someone who's supposed to serve the public has violated that trust severely. And definitely not, equating sexual harassment here with someone being killed. But in terms of the money and the fact that it's going away from the community, and it's like Lisa said, it's not just from, just from the police, like that things have to be reallocated, budgets have to be reassessed. And like when we had our budget fight in New York City, I don't know, I think it was a few months ago, I can't tell time anymore. This was a huge part of it. People were saying, look at the amount of money that's spent on these settlements. And like, how about police don't kill people? How about we reinvent this whole situation so that people don't do the horrific stuff that causes lives and the state money? The people who are behind the police are the same people who want to cut all sorts of government programs and money, and talk about public waste. I think this is the ultimate waste of public money, just in terms of the fact that none of this should have happened. However, like we've been saying, it's important that the family gets something, and that, they're not just, they're not having to go through the emotional pain of the trial.
Comments from the comments gang. Kip DR says, cities literally sell police brutality settlement bonds. This is a business. Have anyone ever heard of that? Police brutality settlement bonds? Kip DR is telling me something new. Is anyone familiar with that concept?
No.
Nor am I. I'm going to have to do my Googles. Kip DR, a quote, good cop who does nothing is a bad cop. No disagreement there. Also from the comments, what is this? Fact check, municipal taxpayers. Look at James, our social media guy. James is quick with the link. I can't read this link right now, James. I mean, but James basically told me that what Kip DR said is definitely a thing. Clifford Maxwell from the comments says, militarized police are like attack dogs that don't know the difference between the good guys and the bad. Do they care? Is the question, Clifford. They whipping everybody ass. Everybody getting whipped. Gang, before we sign off for this Tuesday edition of Stir Crazy, let's have a little bit of comic relief. This is a little bit of a heavy, depressing show. Sorry, my bad. But we know Donald Trump is actively campaigning for president. He was out in Nevada recently where he had a rally in an indoor space where masks were not mandatory. Oh, my goodness. The levels of all kinds of things right there. But there is still a large contingent of Americans who are not subscribing to mask wearing as we are in the throes of a global pandemic that is affecting the United States particularly hard. And the virus seems to not be slowing down at all, despite what Donald Trump has to say. So in Utah, there was actually an anti-mask protest. And our own, I'm assuming Taylor put this on the doc. I don't know who put this on the doc either. You did, Dwayne? Yes. Okay. Well, it better be funny than Dwayne. Run it. Let's check it out.
Now, hundreds have gathered here in front of the Washington County Administration building, calling for the end of a mask mandate, saying they are tired of not living their normal lives.
No more masks! No more masks! Not on the backs of my kids, or are you going to get more federal funding? That's how I feel about that.
A passionate call for action Friday morning in St. George. Several police officers on standby as many locals called concerns about coronavirus spikes overblown.
The flu kills more than coronavirus.
Others calling the virus a hoax or stating that asymptomatic carriers simply do not exist and they cannot be forced to wear masks anywhere as citizens of the United States.
If we want to wear a mask, that's fine. We can take care of ourselves.
Some rally attendees say they shouldn't ever wear masks if they have any medical issues or mental health concerns, or if they feel they simply can't breathe.
When George Floyd was saying, I can't breathe, and then he died, and now we're wearing a mask, and we say, I can't breathe, but we're being forced to wear it anyways.
But many stated that they believe in all cases, masks jeopardize kids' health. Parents are demanding they have the right to decide what to do with their children.
I'll tell you another reason I hate masks. Most child molesters love them.
School administrators responding that they don't understand why crowds are protesting them based on a mandate given by the governor.
They blocked off the front entrance to the school building, and we went out to ask them to move, and they attempted to storm the school building.
The school board is implementing the governor's recent order that face shields alone are not enough. And if a parent is adamant that their child cannot wear a mask or a shield, they must fill out a form including a doctor's note so the district can review it. In St. George, Katie Crowless, ABC4 News.
Please, to any of our viewers who are watching from a different country, send help, please. Help. I need to be rescued. Okay, I will meet you on the banks of the Potomac. Send a boat. Send a raft.
I'm concerned about our education system. I'm so worried and stressed out. Why did you do this to us, Dwayne?
Hold on. Why did that woman invoke George Floyd? George Floyd said, I can't breathe.
Donna. And where? I don't even know where to start. That's a whole nother. We need a whole.
Yeah, I didn't know the thing about the child molesters. That's news, and I guess more people should know that to shield their children.
You see your kids around someone with a mask, then apparently you're supposed to get nervous. Was that what's happening?
Oh, I thought it was the kids wearing the mask.
Oh, and that attracts the child molester.
The molesters.
Did you hear the young man?
I took away from that, but I could be wrong.
Did you hear the child say, flu kills more people than COVID? Aman, okay, you can give it to us straight. You've lived in more countries than me, Lisa, and Rachel put together. America's the dumbest country you've ever lived in, right? I mean, by like a mile, by leaps and bounds. We don't care. You can tell it to us. That's fine.
And Kim, do you mind my telling you that today I was talking to one of the doctors, epidemiologists, and they were saying that all the smoke, which is now coming from the West Coast states and going all the way into Mexico and Canada, and now reaching the East Coast as well, that's going to complicate things far more, especially the people. It's going to impact, according to these people, because the flu season is coming in and there are existing COVID cases. If this happens, and these pollutants are pretty toxic, according to the people that I spoke with, this will blow into another round of tragedy for people with existing medical conditions, because if they get these pollutants in their system, that's going to translate into respiratory issues and furthermore. And on top of it, you have these kinds of divisive narratives, competing narratives going on. This will only spell out disaster for public policy as well. And credit once again goes to the White House for creating the conditions now where there are two opposing groups in the public who just don't want to come to terms with the idea that it's just a mask, which is the bare minimum that you can do to keep yourself safe and others around you. It's really as simple as that. But I don't know why people need the deaths to come knocking at their door for them to understand how crucial these simple things are. For that, I have absolutely no answer. Okay.
I mean, Rachel, you're walking the streets of New York City. What's the mask situation like up there? Are most people still adhering closely to the mask mandate, or is that so 3 months ago?
Well, first, let me say, in terms of us being the stupidest country, Sweden also just decided to totally pretend this didn't happen. And apparently nobody's wearing masks there at all. So, I mean, we've got a lot of really loud, dumb people. I think it's the combination of the loudness of and sort of the way that Americans express themselves combined with the stupidity that just makes everything so much worse. But in terms of mask compliance here in Brooklyn, here in New York City, it's pretty good. Indoors, especially, people are really, really on it. Most people are wearing their masks correctly. You definitely see a few people here and there still doing the below the nose thing. But I think actually the worst situation is with hospitality workers, restaurant workers, service workers to enforce these measures, because most people are following the rules. But it'll just take one person to harass an employee to just take it all down, and to just poison the well completely. And it's created really hazardous conditions for a lot of those folks who are already having to take the subway and potentially expose themselves in other ways. So lots of compliance, but we still got problematic people on the edges.
Lisa, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to let you get the last word in here. I follow you on Twitter. You're pretty awesome on Twitter. One sentiment you have conveyed numerous times is that people are out here maskless, living their best lives. They have decided that COVID is over and they are on to do the next thing. If that involves being in indoor spaces with a bunch of people, you go to the beach, on the boardwalk, Ocean City, it's optional at this point. Are we the sheep that the right wingers say we are? Are we the ones refusing reality here and coronavirus, COVID? It's not so bad, it's just a little flu. When you wearing a mask, you're a sheep. You can't stop living. You got to live.
We are not. But I think that you are speaking to something that I've seen with a lot of my friends that are just am I crazy? Especially, we just had, what was it? I always get Labor Day and Memorial Day confused. Which one was it? Labor Day?
Labor Day.
And people are just out and people are saying, I know I'm still at home. I'm only, I'm leaving for a few, very strategic, maybe masked up events. I'm going to the grocery store. But I'm looking on Instagram and Twitter and folks are just Congo lining through grandma's basement and doing all this other stuff. So I do think that it's a struggle for those of us who read and understand, that this is important. I don't know what to say because it's just going to be what it is. I keep the faith, everybody. That's actually keep, staying in and doing what's right for all of us as a society. Thank you.
And we're going to leave it right there. You guys, you have been tuned in to episode 88 of Stir Crazy, the Devolution or Devolution of America. I'm your host, Kim Brown. I'd like to thank our fantastic panel, as always, Aman Azhar, Rachel Eve Stein, and of course, Lisa Snowden-McCray. McCray. Do you see how much confidence I say your name wrong with? I mean, I'm sorry. Listen, guys, appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We will be back on Thursday for the next episode of Stir Crazy. Don't forget, we are still in the middle of our Real News fundraiser. So if you like Stir Crazy, if you like the type of news that we bring, the perspective that we bring, please go to therealnews.com/donate or /donate. Okay. We just need a couple dollars. We're trying to make our goal, and your help and your support facilitates us to be able to bring you the stories that CNN and MSNBC is not going to tell y'all correctly. So come on to The Real News, drop us a little bit of money and help us out. So we appreciate you guys watching. See you on Thursday. See you later. Bye.